First of all, thanks everybody. I know it's tough to take time out of any day here in the solar industry, so I really appreciate it. And today I just wanted to kind of touch on our access unit. So since we do have 2 access units now, and there are some variations, it's definitely good that we kind of nail down the training on what the different units do and what they come with. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump right in. So just a quick overview of the actual unit. All access units are going to come with the 3.5 kilowatt hour batteries at 48 volts. They come with a leading inverter charger brand, so it'll be always 48 volts for now. They come pre-wired, come pre-programmed. NEMA 3 are outdoor rated, so they can install them outside, and really they're just, the main focus here is for a quick, easy installation. Application-wise, tons of different applications we can use here. New installs, DC coupled systems, AC coupled systems, so existing PV arrays. Outdoor installations are great. And any introduction to energy storage systems. And what I mean by that is maybe you have an installer that has done a lot of grid-tied stuff. They're looking to get into batteries or even just quick battery backup. This is a great kind of starter unit to get going because it doesn't take a lot of wiring and programming. Here's an overview of the Schneider unit. So you can see here is the inverter, the power panel where all the wiring, AC and DC are housed. Over here you have your optional charge controller and your 3 SimpliPhi 3.5 batteries, and some optional stuff over here that we'll get into a little bit more later on in the presentation. Here's some actual pictures of the 2 units side by side. So the Schneider unit was the first one to come out, and now we've created the Outback access unit as well on the right here. So in the Schneider unit, here's the equipment that we're using. The XW Plus, the 6848 inverter charger. This unit can do 6.8 kilowatts continuous, has a max surge rating of about 12 kilowatts, and does 140 amps DC on the charger side of things. The charge controller, which is an optional feature in this unit, is 80 amps at 600 volts. So this is a kind of a cool unit if somebody maybe wants to do DC coupled system, but they're not super used to doing a standard DC coupled system. Well, this charge controller kind of acts like a string inverter. You can run a lot of panels into it. 17 panel strings sometimes, I think even more. So it's an easy transition into DC coupled for most installers. On the Outback side of things, we're using the Radian GS8048 inverter charger. This unit is 8 kilowatts continuous, has a max surge of 16 kilowatts, and its charger is 115 amps DC. So a little bit smaller actually than the Schneider's internal charger. Also, this unit is Rule 21 compliant. So the unit itself is Rule 21 compliant when using the Outback access unit. Really only relevant in Hawaii and California though. This unit also comes standard right now with 2 FM80 charge controllers. These are a bit smaller on the voltage side, so 150 volts max PV input. We're talking about strings of 3 typically, and 80 amp output, as well as you can do about 4 kilowatts PV. And as I said, there's 2 of these. So you're looking at about 8 kilowatts of PV total in the access unit with the Outback. Just real quickly, kind of the difference here. So here's the access unit in this box. This would be the Schneider in particular. And if it was to be AC coupled here, we'd have our AC coupled array going into the sub panel where we'd have our residential critical loads typically. And then from there, it would actually go into the inverter, which would convert the AC energy coming off of this array to charge the battery. Any excess we could still sell off to the grid, as well as have something like a generator hooked up. On the DC coupled side of things, we would have the array not being inverted here at the array, like it would in this case, but it would go to the charge controller, which would charge the batteries first, then push power out to the loads, both the main loads here and the sub panel, and disconnect the grid when needed. This picture is kind of cool. It actually shows DC and AC coupled on the same system. With the access unit, you could potentially do both AC and DC coupled. So just a little bit about choosing the units based on the application. Because there's so much variation in the units, they definitely kind of both have their markets where they strive a little bit better than the other units. So we'll just go to the variants with the Schneider first. So the Schneider currently, with the Access Schneider, we can do either 2 3.5s, 3 3.5s, or 4 3.5 batteries. So that's 7 kilowatt hours, 10.5 kilowatt hours, or 14 kilowatt hours. This unit comes standard with an XW Plus 6848 inverter and / charger. And it also comes with either the SCP, which is the system control panel, or the COM box. So you really don't need both as they're a bit redundant, but you can choose when you order the unit whether you want that system control panel or if you want the COM box. And that's kind of how it will be moving forward with this unit. And I'll get a little bit more into those, the SCP versus the COM box in a little bit here, and kind of touch on what the difference is and what application might be best for each of those units. Some optional stuff with the Schneider Access. 80 amp 600 volt charge controller is an optional feature. As I mentioned, the COM box and the automatic generator start control is also an optional feature. With any of these accesses, you can do paralleling units, so you can actually, parallel a couple units. I really wouldn't go above 3 units paralleled. At that point, I would say a traditional installation would probably make more sense. As well as there's some options for a standalone battery cabinet that just has more batteries, so you're not adding more power, you're just adding more energy to the system. Definitely, if we're going to be paralleling the units, it's good to let us know in advance, as we have to make a few tweaks to the unit so that it can parallel. The Outback variation is 4 3.5 batteries standard, so that's 14 kilowatt hours. It comes with the GS 8048, 2 FM80 standard, and the reasoning for this is that currently with the Outback Radiant or the Outback Access unit as a whole, we cannot AC couple, so we're really only limited here to DC coupling with that Outback unit. Outback has kind of gone back and forth on whether they can AC couple with their inverter. As of last month, they've said to not AC couple with this inverter to us. So we're going to hold our breath on when they come out with their new unit that can AC couple properly. But for now, we just want to stick with always DC coupling these systems, so they will always come standard with those 2 charge controllers. The Outback Mate 3S comes standard as well. That's the control unit, how to change settings and things like that, as well as the Outback Hub 10, which is where the AC sync happens and all of the units, all of the different Outback equipment actually connects together. The Outback Radiant also comes standard with automatic generator start built into it. So as long as you have a 2-wire generator, you'll be able to run a generator to the Outback Access unit just right out of the box. Again, optional features, we can parallel the units or do that optional battery-only cabinet. So just kind of a side-by-side comparison here. The Schneider DC coupling and AC coupling. We can do backup power, peak load shaving, sellback, self-consumption, larger stringed arrays due to that 600 volt charge controller, as well as remote monitoring. The Outback Access unit does DC coupling, no AC coupling though, does backup power, peak load shaving, sellback, self-consumption, remote monitoring, and then the biggest one here, which is wireless gateway. So with the Optics RE and the Mate 3, which we'll get into even a little bit more, we can actually change the settings and remotely. So you could do it even from like an office. An installer, say, has a really far drive to make, he can actually get on, and they can actually check these settings and change them um, from the office. So that's a kind of a cool feature we'll get into here. So as far as installation goes with the access unit, shipping and receiving, I'm sure everybody's probably seen these if AltE is selling and has sold some access units, but these are how they're shipped. They're actually on their side, inside of the unit, and the batteries are not inside of it when you lift it up. So it ships on its side. There are straps, hooks on this side that you could tie straps to lift it up. It's about 700 pounds without the batteries inside of it, so it's definitely not light, but really once it's in place, it's pretty simple as far as installation goes. Picking the site and location of these units, if you're going to go indoors, you could do garage, basement, utility room. Really doesn't matter too much. There's no off-gassing or anything like that. So you could virtually put it wherever you want. However, you definitely want it to be secure. Outdoors, we really want it to be on a concrete pad or even existing concrete. It doesn't need to be a new pad that's built. It is NEMA 3R though, so we can go outside. It can handle weather, rain, and it really does not need any heating or cooling, as long as we're not talking about, if it's very cold, like let's say maybe Alaska or something, then there might be some things to consider as far as that goes. But virtually the inverter itself is enough heat to keep the unit warm, and no wall mounting on these units. So like I just said, concrete pads when we're outside. If they're building a new one, minimum thickness is about 4 inches, and the pad should be 3 inches wider on every side of the access unit. Obviously level and secured, and we actually want to anchor it down, and I'll show you kind of how that works. So here you can see the bottom of the unit has 6 knockout holes here that directly sit over top of where you secure down the bolts. So the idea is that you knock these out and actually use your tool through the top of the access units to anchor down the unit. And then afterwards, you can fill these back in with insulation, and then you're good to go. So as far as the other knockouts go, there's actually 3 1-inch knockout holes on the side, as well as 1 1.5-inch knockout hole on the side. So if you want to add extra knockouts, that's completely fine. Just be wary of the correct conduit fitting to make sure that there's no weather getting inside of the units. Also, if you're going to put multiple units side by side, they don't actually need any space in between. However, if it's any unit's going to need that 3 feet clearance in the front, which is really important so that we can open the door. I've seen it before where somebody places a unit somewhere where they virtually cannot open the door because they didn't think about that 3 feet of clearance in the front. So system programming. So the units are actually coming pre-programmed here with the basic SimpliPhi settings. And what I mean by that is virtually just kind of plain Jane settings. There's no variation to it. And it's really not based off any mode of operation in particular. It's just out of the box, the settings will work. That being said, if you want to change some settings, here we have the Mate 3S, which is what comes in the Outback unit. And here we have the Schneider SCP, which comes with the Schneider unit. So these units can actually get in, change the settings, and really what we want to do is, based on the mode of operation, you might want to change certain settings to better fit the customer's need. Some other things here, possible drop-in files coming soon with the Outback. I'll keep you guys updated on that, but likely that should be coming out pretty soon here, and you'll be able to download a file off the internet, off of our website, onto an SD card, plug it into the access unit through the Mate 3S, and it will download certain mode of operations, whether that's backup power, peak load shaving, things like that. So that'll be pretty cool. Stacking units, this has been coming up a lot lately. There's a few things that need to be done when stacking the units. So the DC inputs for the battery need to be combined. So you really want one battery bank combined, as well as the AC output needs to be combined here. So it's really important that if you are selling multiple units that you know are going to be paralleled like this, to let us know in advance. It's much harder after the fact to try to set these up to be paralleled than to just say right out of the gate that they're going to be paralleled, and our engineers will specifically set up a few different things here so that it's an easy installation with that. Some post-installation stuff. With the Schneider, if we end up with the CommBox feature, which is the Schneider's remote monitoring feature, we really can only monitor the system. We cannot change settings from remotely without a computer on site. It also requires a router that is not included, so any wireless router will work. The Outback, on the other hand, comes equipped with the Mate 3S and the AltE RE. So that one is ready for remote monitoring right out of the box, no matter which options you pick, as well as you can remote program. That one also requires a wireless router that you would just hook into the back of the Mate 3S. So a little bit about the wireless gateway here. So this is actually a real-time picture of the Schneider monitoring system. As you can see, you've got all your devices here, your grid, your loads. You can see how much you're actually pulling off of there, how much the grid's feeding in, what the battery state of charge is at, different things like that, as well as historical data here. But if we were to click on any of these devices and actually try to change them remotely, it would not work. You need a computer on site to do that. But it definitely helps, even with troubleshooting. If somebody is encountering a problem, the installer can actually get on here, see what the data is showing, and actually understand maybe a little bit more about the problem before having to head out on site. With the Outback unit, this is an overview of what the AltE RE looks like. So again, that historical data, as well as you can see how much PV you're producing, where the battery's at, pretty much the exact same thing here, except for here we have our device map. So when you're actually in AltE RE, you can click on device map. You can go in, pick your device, maybe it's the charge controller in the access unit, click on it, and physically change settings remotely. And an installer can have a lot of these on one dock. So if they've installed, let's say, four access units with the Outback systems, they can get all of those into one location here on the computer and be able to monitor all their sites at once and change settings remotely. So warranty information, the access warranty is virtually the exact same as the SimpliPhi 3.5 warranty, 10 years at 10,000 cycles. That's adjusted a little bit here for 5,000 and 3,500. So that just correlates with the depth of discharge used. As far as the inverter and the charge controller, those are just manufacturer warranties. And obviously with the settings, if you're gonna adjust the settings, like things like low battery cutout, we definitely want to be weary of how that might affect the warranty. So that's pretty much the bulk of the access presentation. Typically, I would have thrown in a bit more in regards to some basic 3.5 stuff, but I figured I'd save everybody some time. So I'd love to kind of hop into any questions we might have, and I'm gonna go ahead and take everybody off mute. Okay, so now everybody should be off mute. If we want to just kind of go ahead and start, whoever wants to start out with some questions, we'll get through these.
Hey, Troy, this is Andrea. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so just for example, I think I posed this question to you before the training. The 10 kilowatt hour system is pretty comparably priced to the Sonnen system. So what are the biggest advantages of this system over Sonnen?
Absolutely. And I just was having this conversation with some installers the other day. The big advantages I hear, so first of all, if you're using the Outback system, the remote access is something that, and please quote me if let me know if I'm wrong here. This is just secondhand information for me, is that the Sonin cannot be programmed remotely. So with that unit, you can. Is Sonin outdoor rated as well?
Sonin is, I believe. Oh, is it's not?
I think that's my understanding too, that it's not NEMA 3.
Okay.
So definitely this kind of makes
Sonin tells you to install it in the living room.
in the living room. Yeah, I probably wouldn't want to put the access in the living room. It's a bit cumbersome for that, but they're great for outside, and that's really a big advantage here.
That's nice.
It got its market, but when it is an outdoor installation that somebody really wants, this unit can make a lot of sense. Some other things to consider is the variety here. So, with the 10 kilowatts, as far as Sonin goes, can you parallel those units? Again, I'm sorry, I'm not super educated on the Sonin, but can you put those units side by side?
You can do the one 10 kilowatt hour central unit, and you can add on 3 2 kilowatt hour blocks. As far as I know, the largest you can go is 16 kilowatt hours for the Eco 10.
Gotcha. One other advantage I've heard from installers that have said kind of a good use case versus the Sonin is our ability to add batteries without adding more power. And what I mean by that is you might have this cabinet here with your standard, your Schneider and your 3 batteries, and you want to add more energy now. So you can add another cabinet that has just batteries to reduce costs. You don't have to add a full nother system. You can just add a cabinet with batteries so that you have a lot more energy. You might have, let's say, 9 batteries, but the same inverting power, which maybe you don't need more inverting power.
Troy, do you know much about the Sonin batteries and how SimpliPhi compares with Sonin and the batteries themselves?
Sure. So Sonin is just Sony batteries, which we've actually done some testing, I believe, on in our facility of the cells themselves. As far as data goes, I don't know. I don't have the exact numbers here in front of me, but my understanding is the Sony tends to be not 10,000 cycles as far as warranty goes. I would love to see the Sonin warranty and kind of get an idea of that. And that's tends to be what I harp on as far as life cycles go in general in my overall trainings. Is the best way to understand the difference between any product is to look at what's actually warranted. So in this case, we're going to warranty 10,000 cycles, 10 years, and that's a warranty claim. So we're responsible for that. So I would never base any cycle life off of what companies are claiming, but what they're actually willing to back up with the warranty. My only other quarrel, I guess, with Sonin, since we're on the subject, is they're currently still using the Outback Radian. And from what I've heard, my understanding is that they can only be AC coupled. So that kind of makes me a bit nervous in the sense that Outback's telling me now that we're not going to be AC coupling with the Outback Radian, and apparently Sonin is still doing it. So I try not to go against the inverter's wishes on these kind of things and really stick within what they're willing to warranty as well.
Yeah, they have the same warranty, 10-year, 10,000 cycles.
Okay, perfect. Well, yeah, and I mean that's kind of, we're talking LFP, so it is kind of comparing LFP to LFP, but at the same time, I think it's best to look at the units as a whole and kind of the functionality features and the programming, as well as things like being able to DC couple, being able to remote access the system and change settings, generators. We can actually run generators into these units as well as customize them a little bit.
And is installation really plug and play?
Is it really plug and play? It is in the sense that, so kind of here's how I would run down the installation of an access unit. Let me actually go back a few slides here. So here's your access. Now, when it arrives, you might have these hanging like this, but the batteries are not in the unit. So you put the batteries into the unit, and you would torque down the batteries. And then from there, you have your PV. Let's say it was an AC coupled system. So this charge controller maybe is not there. You'd have your PV run in through the conduit. You would connect it to the PV. There's actually a bus here that you would connect the PV to in this case, which would go to the AC input of the Schneider. And then from there, you would have to run your AC output wires to your loads panel as you would any installation. From there, it's pre-programmed, so virtually you could turn it on and the system would operate. I don't like that word plug and play. I definitely was not the one that put that into this presentation. I try to avoid that word, but it's ease of installation, absolutely.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And a huge amount of the wiring is already done.
Right.
That seems fair to say.
And yeah, and I think that really kind of stems here. So I don't know how many of you have wired up a Schneider, maybe a normal power panel or maybe a dual system or anything like that. Inside this GS load center and this mini power panel, things can get pretty tight, kind of a pain to wire up sometime. So I'd say that's the bulk of the wiring, and that's already done.
So
So do you guys support completely the both of these, the Outback and the Schneider versions? You'll completely support them as entirely off-grid setups, right? If that's what someone wants to do.
Yeah, and I guess that'd bring it around. That was my last thing I missed on the Sonin. My understanding is that they're not off-grid. Well, these units can be warranted. They are warranted off-grid, and oftentimes I see them off-grid. So that's kind of where maybe the Sonin might shine a little bit on the residential on-grid market. I would say these are great units for any of your off-grid needs that you want the system outside or anything like that. But yeah, we will absolutely support, warranty these full systems off-grid.
For the Outback model, DC coupled, can you optionally upgrade to FM 100s or is it just the FlexMax 80s?
Great question. That's actually been my goal the last week here, is to really push our engineers to agree to that. As far as I know, I don't. If it was ordered, I can't imagine it'd be a problem. I know Ricky is your application engineer rep. I am sure I could work with him and we could get that as an option, because personally I prefer the FM 100 as well versus the two FM 80s. So let's put a pin in that, but definitely follow up with Ricky or myself here in a couple of weeks, and I should have a clear answer, and hopefully that answer is yes.
Cool. Makes sense.
Are the batteries made in the U.S.?
Yes. The SimpliPhi battery is made in Ojai, California.
How about the lithium cells or the materials?
So the cells themselves are kind of the guarded secret of where purchased from. They're not made in Ojai, I can tell you that much. But we do buy from a bunch of different sources when it comes to cells, and always make sure to test whichever cells are the best. One of those being in the United States. Again, I can't really say where the current one is, just because I'm kind of not at liberty to say so. Sorry, that sounds like a cop-out answer, but restrictions from my own company. I can assure you, though, the batteries are assembled fully in Ojai, as well as tested rigorously in our facility. Soon to likely be somewhere a little bit less off the beaten path, maybe Ventura or Thousand Oaks. Any other questions?
So I'm trying to word this so it doesn't sound so flip, but I mean, Is there a special sauce in these other than the fact that they're pre-wired and pre-configured and everything? I mean, what I'm seeing, and again, I don't have time to word it nicely. It just looks like a standard system in a cool NEMA 3 case. Am I missing something?
Honestly, to be frank with you, that's about right. It really is just an all-in unit to make ease of installation.
Right. Yeah, which is great. I just didn't know if there was something else.
Yeah, no, it's pretty straightforward. I think the big advantages here are definitely installers that maybe aren't that comfortable with doing it themselves yet.
And I think to that point, I mean, for as much as these things weigh and the price of these things, and again, I'm talking about both Sonnen and the Access units, for those customers who can afford it and do want that ease of installation.
Right.
Yeah.
The fact that they don't have to go through a ridiculous 5-hour training to buy
Amen.
these things is going to be our, and your plus, the biggest plus.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amen.
And I see them a lot currently. I see these a lot in a few places. Rural United States. So I'm talking like Kansas, Missouri, a lot of like farming and agricultural. I see these a lot. They don't, they maybe want the unit somewhere close to like a farmhouse that has agricultural equipment, pumping, things like that. I also see them in Puerto Rico right now a lot. Obviously, that's just a big market in general for batteries, storage, and the whole thing. I think the NEMA 3R kind of sells it out there where, you're concrete bolting this thing down outside somewhere safe in hopes that we're going to make it through a hurricane with one of these units. So I have seen quite a bit of these out in Puerto Rico. As far as residential, I don't know the exact numbers. I don't see a ton of them, but definitely I do see a lot of these for installers' first off-grid installation as well.
I have a question. It's just out of curiosity. I mean, I know you have 12, 24, and 48 volt versions of your batteries, but why can't they be put in series like the 12 and 24 volt models?
Sure. Sure. It's actually due to the battery management system. So within each of these units, there's a battery management system, and that battery management system is specific to one type of configuration, which in this case is the parallel configuration. That being said, I don't know how up to date I know we've kind of not talked about it too much recently, but we are coming out with our unit that can be put into series. That unit is in its final kind of leg here of real world testing where it's actually on site being tested. And that unit will be able to be put into series. I believe it can go up to about 500 and something volts, but that's a completely different BMS as well. So we really, with these units, we just kind of want to stick with the parallel configuration. And then just one more thing, you jogged my memory there, so I did want to mention this. I don't know how familiar you are with the power bank. That's kind of our rolling unit there. Likely we're going to be also adding a unit that's kind of an augmented version of that. That's going to be a smaller access unit. It'll have option for 2 batteries only, as well as a smaller Magnum inverter. So that'll be available pretty soon here, and that'll be more of a kind of disaster relief and things like that, emergency power, where it's a bit of a smaller unit, so the cost will be down, as well as it'll be a little bit more mobile and easy to move. It'll be about, don't quote me here, but I believe half the size of one of these units.
Do you support 3 of the Schneider as a 3-phase?
Good question. I've never seen it before out of these units. I don't see why it would be a problem. Again, I just would say like specifying with the engineers beforehand would be really helpful, as I know I've done 3-phase with Schneider and it can be a bit tricky, especially when we're talking about from case to case. So I don't see why not. Just definitely specify that it would be a 3-phase system.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah. Any more questions for me on these? Or even, we got a little bit of time here. So if there's any just general questions about the 3.5s, I'm also happy to answer those.
Well, do the battery racks for the 3.5 48-volt model, are they the same rack for the 3.5 24-volt?
The wall mounts, is that what you're talking about?
Yes. Yeah, that's what yeah.
Yep. So the batteries are actually the exact same dimensions. So the 3.5 48 and the 3.5 24 are the same size, just different configuration internally.
Do you have any recommendations for battery combiners besides what Midnight has to offer? Like if someone has 10 batteries and
Sure. I know that's like the tricky question, right? Because no one wants to splurge the money on the Midnight combiner, even though it definitely is a nice combiner. This is gonna sound strange, but custom kind of seems to be the cheapest way to go, at least. I shouldn't say cheapest, the most inexpensive way to go. So is to actually buy the copper and create your own bus bar. I mean, virtually all it is insulated box with a copper bus that has holes drilled out for lugs, 3/8 lugs. So, if you're looking for something that's straight out of the box, they do make some kind of DC. Let me think of how to describe this. It'd be like an AC loads panel virtually, but it's a DC loads panel that you can run these to. You just need to check to make sure that it has the correct fittings. So those ones have breakers built in, so you actually have to run the breaker, which is not necessary, but it's a bit redundant, but it's okay to do. Some other things I've seen people do is use things like Polaris blocks, as well as, I'm trying to think of the name of this, but there is one more unit that kind of fuses them externally, so you don't have to have this big cumbersome box to actually do it. And then beyond that, if you're doing 3, sometimes even 4 batteries, like if I'd say we're doing 3 batteries with the Schneider XW and we had the Schneider power panel, that internal bus has enough room to fit 3 batteries on. It's got room for 3 lugs.
Okay, well, yeah, that gives us some ideas. The other thing about Midnight is a lot of their combiners can't handle battery to inverter cables above a certain size, even if they're rated for enough amps that the inverter could pull from the battery bank. And that battery combiner is pretty cool, but yeah, it's sometimes it's overkill and more than people want to spend. So just kind of depends. But like with installers, I'm sure it's a lot easier for them to make something up.
Right. And that's kind of my point is like with the gutter, like you just get like a simple gutter, like a J box or whatever. And copper's it's not cheap, but it's definitely cheaper than buying something like a Midnight combiner. And then you can just kind of design it the way you want it and drill out the holes the way you want it. So tons of different ways to do that. And really, we'll have to get you guys on with the full out technical training here soon. It's a bit longer. It's about 2 hours long, but it goes into different combining methods and what to use. And I go through some different pictures of what people have used and what installers kind of are currently using. So
that would be cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we're actually going to be talking, Ricky and I are going to be talking at your event in Puerto Rico here in August, and it'll probably be about an hour of that kind of talk. So I don't know how many people are going to Puerto Rico for that, but.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out which ones are going right now, so hopefully it'd be great to get everybody to go. But
yeah, I'm very excited for that. Actually, I'm really looking forward. We were just discussing it yesterday. So
No, we're thrilled to have you guys there. So this was really good, Troy. We appreciate your time, and certainly we'll keep you posted on when we could get this up and running on the website and see what kind of traction we get with it. So
awesome. And if anybody has any questions about the access, the batteries, really anything, feel free to email me. It's troyd@simpliphipower.com.